right, welcome to episode number 245 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast. We are recording on August the 11th, 2024. My name is Eric, host of the show, based in Southern Ontario, hunter, target shooter, ham radio operator, and of course, computer geek. As a first responder, witnessed an over-reliance on emergency services during major events and started a small preparedness company to help people get better prepared for at least 72 hours.
And I'm Jeff. I'm based in Central Ontario. I'm a target shooter, ham radio operator, general overall handyman, and weather nerd.
Awesome. If you want to support the show, you can buy some swag. We've got the Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt and the tactical Velcro patch available at prepperpodcast.ca. All the proceeds help cover the podcast cost. If I could talk. Whew.
Yeah. And if you're enjoying the show, please take a few minutes and submit a review wherever you found us. We want your feedback, good or bad. We also invite you to reach out, tell us about something you learned this week. Again, you can email us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
All right, so we've got some, expensive, monetary, I couldn't come up with a good joke for this one.
Whatever you want to call it.
Whatever you want to call it, content in this episode. We're going to start off with some news articles. We'll update you on our personal preps since the last episode. We're going to get into the main topic, and we're talking about the importance of cash. So it should be some fun.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get into the news, and we'll let Jeff run with it.
Yeah, I got a couple quick articles here. So there's been quite an increase in seismic activity in and around Japan, and around that fault line, even a bit up towards Alaska's had several small earthquakes in the last bit. So Japan issued their first ever mega quake warning on Wednesday after they had a 7.1 earthquake. Their prime minister or president, whatever you want to call him, canceled an out of country trip he was supposed to take just to be there. They really kind of thought something was going to happen, and I was kind of sitting around waiting for it to happen too. And so far, knock on wood, it's been 4 days. They're still getting small earthquakes, but nothing big has happened yet. So we'll have to see what happens. That's the one thing with the earthquakes. You never know. It's not like you can see them coming or, whatever. It just happens when it happens.
It's true.
And the second article I have for supply chain sort of issues is we have a potential rail strike looming for Canada. Some of it may even lap a bit into the U.S., but the CN and CPKC, so that's Canadian Pacific and Kansas City, they joined in to make one big rail infrastructure, I guess, or whatever you call it. They've been in negotiations broke down. There was a review by the Industrial Relations Board, and they wouldn't step in. So it looks like if there's no deal reached, which it sounds like there's not going to be one, because both sides are far apart and they're shooting pretty significant barbs at each other, that there will be a Canadian rail strike as soon as August 22nd. Whether they go on strike or the companies lock them out, either way, the union says we're going to go on strike, and the railways say, yeah, no problem, go on strike, we're locking you out anyways. So it's going to be interesting. I can't see it being, considering the amount of stuff that gets sent by rail, I can't see that the government will let it go on too long before they'll step in. But then again, we're talking about the Liberals, so who knows what they're going to do. So anyways, just something to be prepared for in the next couple of weeks. It does also say that it will also affect commuter operations in Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal, because they rely on the CPKC dispatchers who will also be going on strike. So, yeah, could be interesting.
I feel as though there's a threat of a rail strike every couple of months.
There's a threat of any kind of strike every couple of
Yeah.
months anymore. It just, I get it that,
Yeah.
the economy's rough, but if you keep giving all
Yeah.
these, public sector people wages to catch up to what things are costing, the cost of those things go up, and then they want
It's
another
true.
raise, and it's just a vicious circle, right? So,
This is true. This is
I'm
true.
not laying blame at either one of them. Just saying, it's just a vicious circle that just keeps going around and around. So,
This is true. I just take a second here to shout out to Denny. I see him in the live chat there. He hasn't been around for the last couple of weeks, I believe. You got some shift schedule changes, so it's good to see you back in the live chat.
absolutely, yeah, he's been out for a while, so yeah, good to see him back. Welcome, Denny.
All right, let's move into what we've done lately for preps.
Sweet nothing. I've been down at the trailer for I think today's day 11. So just been doing some R&R, literally basically doing nothing for 10 days. Kind of feels good actually, but yeah.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
Nope.
No, it's
Be
you
back
got to
home,
take that time sometimes, right?
Yeah, probably be back home tomorrow or Tuesday at the latest, and I'm quite sure there's going to be a long list of stuff to do, but it is what
Yeah,
it
there
is.
always is. But that's important to do, right? And that's something that people should keep in mind, that you can't be doing the preparedness thing 24/7, 365. You'll just burn yourself out. It's important to kind of take some time, kick back, relax. And if you got all your stuff kind of squared away, put your feet up, have a
Exactly.
beer.
Yeah. I
relax.
really didn't have
Nothing
much
wrong
to
with that at
do,
all.
so
Yeah, for me, crazy, stupid busy with work, been all over the place. And then on top of that, the kids being off on summer break has just consumed a whole ton of my time. But have been able to carve out a little bit of time to start practicing a little bit of Morse code here and there, because yes, still a radio nerd, that's not changing. And the other day got out camping with a little guy, and once he got to bed, I was able to take my my mobile radio setup, get it deployed, set up, and make some contacts. And it's always good to be able to get everything set up and working. And it was certainly working because I made contact with Slovenia, which was kind of cool. So just off of a little wire at the campsite, sitting beside the tent, running off a battery. So it's always good to get that practice in and make sure everything works the way you expect it's going to work.
excellent. Yep.
But with that, maybe we'll move into the main topic. And this evening, we're going to talk about just the importance of cash. It's something that people tend to talk about a lot in the preparedness community, and kind of gets people riled up in certain instances. Depends on what it is you're talking about exactly. We're not going to advocate for only cash all the time. There's times are good. If you're using cards or whatever, that's your own personal choice. But we wanted to talk about just why cash is important in emergency preparedness. Maybe tell a couple of stories, or go back and look at a couple of things that have happened in the past where cash got us through, and just kind of why it's so prevalent in the preparedness community, and why everybody is always so focused on, you got to carry cash, got to have money available to you, you got to stock it away, have it close by, etc. So we figured it'd be a good one to kind of talk about, maybe demystify a few things, and just chat it out. So here we are for episode 245. So probably the number one thing that comes to mind as soon as you get talking about carrying cash and needing it is if you get into that extended power outage scenario, right? End up no power. It's been out for a couple of days, and all of a sudden now the shops, the stores, the gas stations, all those places that tend to have some kind of an emergency backup, whether it be battery backup or generator backup, can't now process your card, like your debit card, your credit card, your gift card, whatever kind of card it is you have. And you're 3 or 4 days into this emergency situation where you've got no power either, or maybe you do. Maybe you've got a generator of some sort, or your batteries are solar. But how are you going to buy things if you don't, if you need them and there's no way to use those cards? And on top of that, if the banks have lost power, the ATMs aren't working, so now you can't get your funds. It's something to kind of keep in mind for this type of emergency preparedness thinking, right? Just having cash in your pocket, $20, $30, whatever it is you think you need. It's kind of important, right?
Yep, absolutely. And I would imagine. I mean, I've heard stories on both sides where you know somebody's gone to a there's been a power outage and they've gone to a grocery store and they've tried to buy something and they just weren't interested in selling it to them. And they're like, I have cash. And this just, the comment the person made to me blew my mind. But he said I'm assuming it was the store owner, and said, like, hey, I'll offer you, like, 50 cents on the dollar or whatever it was he was offering him for your stuff before it goes bad and you have to throw it out. And he just turned to him and said, why would I take 50 cents on the dollar from you when I can throw it out and the insurance company will pay me 100% of my loss? And that just, I was just kind of like, you're just going to throw food away and let your insurance company pay you for it instead of actually legitimately giving it out to people or letting people buy it for maybe a bit of a reduced price, but you're giving them food. And apparently he said the guy just wasn't interested.
Huh. It's an interesting take on it. I hadn't really considered the insurance claims side for the business instead of taking the cash, holding on to it, letting that item expire basically, and now being able to claim it. Yep. That's assuming the lights come back on.
Yeah.
The lights don't come back on. Now what?
Exactly. So yeah, I'm not saying that would be the norm. I doubt it would be.
Right. Yeah.
That those people would probably realize that everybody else is in the same boat, and they would, if you've got cash, you're king. So
yeah. And we could go down the road. I know some people are going to be jumping up going, well, what about gold and silver and all those other denominations? Not to downplay that as an option, but we wanted to focus just on cash today. Yeah, sure. If things really go south, gold, silver, etc., are probably going to be usable to you as well. So I don't want everyone thinking who's listening, jumping up and down, going gold, silver, etc. Yeah, it's an option as well, but we're focusing on cash.
Yeah, for me, at least in my opinion on it is that gold and silver and that's a long term option. Like
exactly.
we're getting into months now, not just a few days, maybe a week and a half.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. That's I just wanted to address that up front because I know there's going to be a couple jumping up and down going, you guys aren't talking about silver and gold, and that's important. And it is. But in this scenario, we're talking more short term, like Jeff said, and just getting you kind of through that power outage. I'm sorry, I got a little bit of a cold if you couldn't tell from the voice, so I'll be muting the mic here and there as I try to cough my way through talking this stuff out.
And the other thing I'll jump in is cash is good to have. I would suggest smaller denominations, 5s, 10s, maybe 20s, even change if you've got it. Especially if you're going out and you're buying something, you're going to that store and there's other people that see you. If you're whipping out 50s and 100s, guess what? You're a target.
You're giant target now.
And you're probably not going home with those 50s and 100s.
No.
So, but if you're throwing out hey, I'll buy this for $5 or this for $10, you're not giving off that perception that, hey, I've got a lot more where that came from. And so.
And that's kind of a great point. It kind of comes back to a couple episodes we've done in the past where focusing on your environment and what's going on around you and what's happening and being cognizant of the fact that people are going to be watching and they're going to be paying attention to everybody else. So having that plan ahead of time of, okay, power's gone out, using that scenario still, right? Not a big deal, happens all the time. It's been out for a couple of days. Okay, that's a little bit more off-putting, right? In a few days now, not so normal for the most part. Okay, now I need some supplies. Local shops are still open. Planning out the denominations that you're going to bring with you and being prepared in the worst case scenario of getting out to a store and somebody going, oh, that guy's got, a couple 5s, maybe a 10 or whatever, and being able to recognize the fact that either you're going to be able to go and get the items that you want to purchase, maybe you lose them to somebody being stupid and coming by and trying to take your things, and just realizing, you know what, I've got $20 in my pocket. If that's going to satisfy the guy, he takes it and goes. Or if the scenario plays out enough and you can retaliate back safely, of course, it all depends on what the scenario is you're looking at, right? But planning out ahead of time what you're going to bring, realizing the fact that you're either going to be able to get those items or maybe you're going to end up losing it depending on the scenario. But just having your mindset that we've touched on a few times of here's how things are going to go and here's how I want it to be. Very, very important. And also being, like Jeff said, cognizant of the fact that you're not flashing all that cash around, right? Know how you're going to take your wallet out of your pocket. Know what you're going to be able to display and show, and be prepared to have some of it stashed maybe in one pocket, one in another pocket, one somewhere else. And just that way, people that are watching you are not seeing everything that you're carrying.
Yep. And on that too, as you said, Eric, perception and visual. So say, for example, we talked about flashing, but you go into the store and the guy, you buy, I'm not saying don't buy the store out, but be cognizant, like we said, if you walk out of that store and you're carrying 10 shopping bags full of stuff, again, you're a target.
Yeah.
If you've got one bag, maybe two, depending on, as you say, the circumstances and everything. And as we keep saying, know your crowd, know your area, know if you need to take something that's going to protect you in this scenario, and we'll leave it at that. But just, And
this is, of course, kind of spelling out. We're getting a little bit further down into the weeds of a power outage kind of situation, or a situation that's knocked out resources in the area.
Yeah.
The first couple of days, we've seen it with some major power outages that have happened here before. For the most part, the community comes together, everybody's friendly, everybody helps each other out, right? And don't fall into that trap of, okay, everything's fine, everything's great, everyone's helping each other out. That's great, because that's how humans normally react to things in the short term, right? We're all trying to help each other out, but also just be cognizant of that underlying section of society that may not want to be helpful and may want to just take advantage of what you have. And they may very well be sitting out in the shadows watching and seeing what everybody else is doing. And they see you go into the store and buying things and getting things for yourself, your neighbors, etc. But they're watching, right? So just keep an eye on you, head on a swivel. Like I said, we've said that a million times before. And just keep an eye and just be cognizant of the fact that if you've got cash on you, people are going to notice.
Yep.
And yes, we've got Douglas in the live chat here. We've got a trained investigator. Yep, there's only two of us tonight. The joys of the summer.
The two most important, the intern, and the rest of them just this was too much for them. So
yes, it is me and Jeff this evening. The joys of summer months and trying to podcast on weekends. Sometimes everybody's around and sometimes nobody's around. So
yep,
here we are. That's okay. That's why we like to have a whole bunch of people on the panel, so we can at least get a few people on a Sunday night together to do an episode. So
one of the other things we could kind of talk about or chat about is, where do you put your money away? Where do you keep it? Do you always have cash on you? I do. I always have cash on me. And I have a couple of hiding spots for some other accessible cash that I may need if situation presents itself. And do you keep a bunch in your go bag?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or do you hide some in an inconspicuous spot in your vehicle or something, or where people may not really think to look? Or, I mean, obviously, what's the first thing they're going to open? The glove box, maybe your center console.
Yep.
But if you've got somewhere else inconspicuous that you could hide it, I would suggest doing that. But yeah, I always have cash on me.
Yeah. And that's a great point too, is planning out where you're going to keep it, how much you're going to keep. We kind of touched on small denominations versus larger ones. Um, but having that cash and then deciding, is this cash that I'm going to keep on me that, if I just happen to be at a store and I want to grab something and maybe I don't have, if I regularly use a credit card or a debit card or whatever, I don't have those available to me. Am I going to use that cash then to purchase something? Or is that cash you set aside and you do not touch unless shit's hit the fan? Right. So that's kind of a thing that you need to decide too. It's probably good to have a little bit of both, right? Have that cash that you set aside that you don't touch, period, unless something's gone completely wrong. And then a few bucks on you just in case that covers off those daily necessities. Or even let's reverse it. You have all your cards on you. You get to the store and the internet's down and they can't process cards. So you got some cash on you. You can pay with cash, carry on your day. Doesn't sound like an emergency preparedness thing, but it's just an everyday preparedness thing because maybe you just need that little bit of gas to get home, or you need that coffee because the kids didn't sleep last night, so you were up all night and you just need to pick me up, right? It's
That
just kind of
absolutely
defining
happened
what
to
the
me.
cash is for.
Yep, that absolutely happened to me many years ago. But um, I was basically like out in the middle of nowhere, and there was one small town, and I get there to get gas because I need gas to get to the next town, and the big sign on their gas pump says cash only, debit down. I had cash. I was good. There
Yep.
were other people there that they're like, one guy was like, it wasn't obviously the store's fault. There's the machine was down, but the guy was like, well, you have to do something because I have to get here and I need gas, and if your machine isn't working, you should just give me enough gas and you should let me go and I'll come back later and pay. Blah blah blah. And they're like, no, that's not how the
Yep.
system works. And I just went inside and gave them my money, and they turned the machine on. They turned the gas pump on, and
Yep.
I pumped my gas and drove away. So
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that you may come across a gas station that just won't, by like you said, no fault of their own. Technology's just failed that day. Well, look at the Rogers outage, right? That we had a little while ago. Couldn't process any payments. If you had cash
yep.
in your pocket, you're still good to go, right? So it doesn't have to
Or
be the doom and gloom scenario, the whole world's ending and oh my God, I need cash to get out of the apocalypse. It could be just, and it most likely will be, just everyday little annoyances that happen where the system's gone down and you still got some cash in your pocket, so you can still, like
or
Jeff
this
said,
or
get
this
some gas, right?
whole yep. Or something big happens like that crowd strike
Right.
issue that we had.
Hmm.
Apparently, there were there were people that didn't get paid for days because the banks couldn't process the payroll or however it worked, and they were going. I think I read somewhere somebody said their paycheck was 4 days late.
Yep. There's that
So
too.
yep,
Yeah. There's a lot of reliance on technology, right? So having some cash on
there's
you,
too much.
way too much reliance on technology. And that's
Way too
coming
much.
from a computer geek like myself.
Hmm.
Right. We've got Dave in the live chat says multiple hiding spots keeps at least some of it safe from robbers and the wife. So good point. Stash cash in all kinds of different spots, right? But don't forget where you stashed it.
Yep.
That's the trick.
And when you're buying that new couch and throwing the old one away, remember what might be hidden in that couch.
Yeah. Yeah. Take the money, take the bags out that are stamped with the money symbol before you throw the couch
Yep.
out.
Hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, like there's all kinds of options that you've got. Obviously the store cash, if you're going to store a significant amount, and this all kind of relates to your personal preferences, right? We're not going to tell you have to have this certain amount. You need to carry this amount. You need to have, X amount of fives and X amount of 20s and X amount of tens. It's totally up to you and your planning and what's going to fit kind of in your situation for what you're going to keep. But just as far as storing cash at home, There's the option of just the old traditional safe. Right? You can store it in a safe at home. Probably the first thing any nefarious individual is going to look for in your house is some kind of a safe, because that just screams something important is in here. You could look at that. Hidden compartments, probably the number one favorite of preppers. Finding somewhere to stash some cash that doesn't look like it would hold cash is a pretty good idea. And then, like we've kind of touched on, just diversifying where you're going to store it, right? Store some in the safe. Maybe use that, accept that's going to be kind of your throwaway. If somebody does break into the house, they're going to go over the safe first. They get the safe, well, they get away with whatever money's sitting in the safe, and just be prepared to be okay with that if it happens. But then stash some somewhere else in your little hiding spot that doesn't look like it would hold cash. Kind of acts as, two birds, one stone. Guys that came in and took your stuff are now happy because they think they got what they were looking for, but they missed the actual main stash of things. And you still have a cash available to you, right? I think we've talked about that quite a bit in the podcast, of just having something that you're willing to lose, but actually having more of it somewhere else. So you're not actually out, but you've at least gotten rid of a threat or moved somebody along that maybe you just weren't able to fight off. So I'm not going to say don't fight them off, but it's not probably the wisest choice. What else do we have here? We can move into bartering, right? If you are into that holy shit situation where things have really gone downhill, you might be the only one on the block that's got cash. Use that as a bartering option, because people still recognize what it is, right? We've been using it for ever and ever.
And depending on what it is you're looking for, you may not have something yourself that you can barter for what that person has, but if that person's willing to sell it to you for money, well, then you can buy it.
Exactly. And thanks for getting me through that coughing fit, Jeff. This cold sucks. My goodness. It's the middle of August. I shouldn't have a cold. Another thing to think of, and we've already kind of touched on the precious metals, but alternatives to cash, food, tools, those are bartering options as well. Books, any kind of equipment you have, keep those in mind. Just kind of touch on that, even though we're talking about strictly cash tonight, but it's always a good reminder. But another thought, what denomination or what type of currency are you going to keep? Are you going to hold on to strictly local currency? Would you look at foreign currency? Would that maybe be something that's useful to you? Being in Canada, is it worthwhile maybe stashing away some American denomination of currency as well, in case you maybe end up across the border, depending on what kind of scenario you're dealing with? That is completely a personal kind of decision. You're going to know what your plan is. You're going to know what your options are for either getting out of a situation that you're in or staying at home. So thinking about that, though, I don't think that's something that a lot of people really focus on. People will kind of focus on keeping the local type of currency ready to go, but I don't think they really focus on having foreign currency, because getting that foreign currency in a situation where maybe the power is out or things have gone awry other ways, getting that actual foreign currency, if you decide, hey, you know what, I'm hopping the border somewhere else, could be quite difficult, if not impossible. So figuring out what you want to keep and what types is kind of critical now, because right now you can access it. If things go awry, you might not be able to. You might still be able to get your local currency, depending, but the foreign currency is going to be really, really hard. Yeah. So, and that's going to kind of be up for our guys and gals that are living closer to the like border towns and such. But it could be folks too that are a little bit further into in the provinces. It really depends on what you think you're going to do in a situation.
Yep.
Or even just like a mix of currencies, right? That's probably the best way to do it, I would think. Because you're going to want some local currency, because that's what people local to you recognize and will use. But again, maybe in a bad situation, they'd be willing to accept in Canada American. I don't know if Americans would be willing to accept Canadian, because our money is colorful and I guess, weird to them, but having some different denominations might not hurt. But again, that's kind of up to your specific scenario as to whether or not it be foreign currency would be useful in your area or not, or useful at all in your preparedness. We kind of touched on protecting your cash. But again, just being cognizant of your surroundings and not flashing the cash around is obviously important. And just safeguarding it, having that mindset, knowing that you've got some cash on you and maybe people are watching you. It's just we harp on that a lot, and we've harped on it a lot throughout all the different episodes of the podcast. But it's important that just situational awareness is key, right? Just especially in a scenario where people are starting to get a little bit itchy and things have been not the norm for a little bit longer than 2 or 3 days. Situational awareness is huge, right? Like we said, some real world scenarios of that happening. Like the Rogers outage is huge, and that's probably the most recent in memory for Canadians, anyways. For our international listeners, Rogers is a major telecommunications corporation, and they had a little bit of an oopsie during an update, or so they say, a software update to some major equipment, which brought down pretty much all of Canada for quite a significant period of time. And transactions were not able to be made. And by significant, I mean it was about a day or so. Transactions weren't able to be made. You weren't paying by credit card or debit. The whole system was down. Cell phones were down. Like everything was, internet was down. It was a big deal. And if you had cash, you were still good to, for the most part, operate. There were still some stores that just wouldn't operate at all. They just shut right down. But if places had things in place to be able to operate with cash only, you were able to still move about your day fairly normally. There's still some things that kind of got in your way, but for the most part, you'd be unaffected.
Yep. So just on that sort of bit of a line. So sadly, in Canada, there are no laws that compel a merchant to accept cash. Merchants can just refuse cash. There was a new, I guess, kind of deli sort of food trucky kind of place, like they did subs and fries and that kind of stuff in Midland, and they put right on their door from day one, cash not accepted, until the power went out, and then they were more than happy to take your cash. But they just said we're not taking cash. And that just blew my mind, because I'll get into this a little bit, but I won't go too deep, but I'll try and keep it short. So kind of something that people don't understand is cash holds its true value. So here's an example. I buy something from Eric for $50. If I give him a $50 bill, he has a true $50 bill. If I pay him by an online transaction somehow, a Visa, debt, whatever, the banks charge him a fee, or they charge me a fee. But anyways, he's not getting $50. He's maybe getting $48 or whatever. Correct. The transaction fee comes off. So now instead of Eric getting 50, he gets 48. So now when he goes to spend that $50 technically that I've given him somewhere else, and he uses a card, now it's losing more value. And every time you use a card to make that payment, that $50 continues to lose value. And I believe they said after, I think it was 26 or 27 transactions, technically that $50 is gone. It no longer exists. It's been sucked up by the fees, by the big banks who are making record profits. If it's the $50 that I give to Eric, and Eric gives it to somebody else, and somebody else gives it to somebody else, and they do that 27 times, guess what? The 27th person still has the full $50 in their hand. There's no depreciation. Nope. There's no taking money off the top. There's nothing. It holds its true value.
And we can go down the cybersecurity rabbit hole here for a second as well. Every time you buy that thing with that credit card, there is a record of what you purchased, when you purchased it, where you purchased it, at exactly what time you purchased it. And that, of course, is all being aggregated and sold off to data brokers. So
Right.
do I have an episode for you?
Exactly. So yeah, I
we
had that
we
in my
covered this in
notes.
the cybersecurity episode.
Yep. I had that in my quick notes that I missed. Yeah,
Oh.
was that technically cash can't be tracked by the government. Yes, they know when you take it out of your bank account or whatever, but that's all they know.
Yep,
That's
it's
it.
true.
Hey, Jeff just took $250 out of the bank. I wonder what he bought. None of your business. And you're never going to know because there's not going to be a receipt. So, yeah.
Yep. So there's that little bit of anonymity to cash, right? Which I think is the big draw to the preparedness community as well, is just simply being able to feel like you're not being tracked, although there's still ways that you can be tracked.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just it's making it trickier because, again, paying with cards and such, there's that digital trail right away, right? It's instantly, as soon as that transaction is done, it's linked to your name. What you bought is linked, the time, date, location, merchant you bought it from is all there. And then, like Jeff said too, there's all the fees that fly around. And you know what? It's convenience. So a lot of us use it because it's convenient. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, the argument of, cards are bad, cards are evil. You know what? If you use them, great. If you don't, great. It's your personal preference as far as what you do and don't do. But having a little bit of cash in your back pocket, probably a wise choice, especially if you're listening to this podcast and you're kind of, even if you're just new to the preparedness world, or you're getting into it, or you've been into it for years and years and years, having a little bit of cash in your back pocket, it's not going to hurt anything. And it might just get you through that one little scenario. Like we said, you're wheeling home and all of a sudden the internet's out and the gas station can't process your transaction, but they can take your cash. That's great. And then, like Jeff said, you're not lining the pockets of the bankers then either. So it's kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
And it blew me away when when I saw in your notes that there's no law that compel anybody to accept cash or emergent to accept cash, because that's kind of a thing you hear too. A lot of people argue that, well, you have to take cash. It's required by law. I looked it up and you're 100% right. There's nothing that says you have to.
And
it's a wise choice,
but
you don't have to.
I was the same way. I thought, places could not turn down legal currency till I started doing a bit of homework. And then that's where I discovered there's a move, not in Canada. There's a move in the States. There's a couple of states that have already passed legislation that says merchants, that where cash is presented, the merchant must accept it. So you can't just say, no, I'm not going to take your money. I think I'm trying to think what it was. I think Missouri was one of them. And then there's a handful of states that have pending laws to come out to compel the merchants to take cash, because everybody is, and I think rightfully so, starting to wake up a little bit more. Again, we don't like to get too political here and whatever, but they're starting to wake up to the reality of how bad a cashless society can really be. And we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. That's all I'm going to say on it. But I just think some places are starting to wake up a little bit to that. So
it blows my mind, even the story you're telling, Jeff, where a business doesn't want to accept cash, because being someone that runs a business, taking credit cards is debit cards as well. But debit cards don't cost nearly as much, but credit cards, at least 2.6 to 3% on any transaction, plus another little fee of like 75 cents or $1. It cuts in the profits huge, because like Jeff talked about, those, that percentage comes off the top. The merchant only gets what's left over. I don't know why you wouldn't want to take cash, because you get the full $50. You don't get 48 of the 50, right? But it is what it is. But yeah, it was interesting because I think a lot of a lot of people just in general, they don't necessarily have to be in the preparedness community, but just people in general kind of think that merchants have to accept cash. And I think that's a little bit of an urban legend, at least Canada-wise. We can't speak to other countries, but in Canada, it doesn't appear to be a law that they can't not. But I think it's silly that they wouldn't, given the rates that are charged to process those cards. It's insane.
Well,
But you have to do it because it's convenient.
That's exactly like when I was looking at it, I was thinking like, what, as you said, Eric, being a businessman like you are, why wouldn't you take cash? Why wouldn't you take that full $50 instead of selling something that's worth $50 and accepting 47 for it? Technically, you're getting less for it.
I like Joey's comment in the live chat. I'm going to get pesos so it looks like I'm wealthy. It's good. I like it.
Yeah,
a little bit of humor in the live chat tonight. It's good. It's good.
Yep.
And Dave in the live chat's got a good point as well. Keep currency that coincides with every passport. So yeah, if you got different passports, so you've got residency in different countries, and your passport allows you in the different countries fairly easily. Yeah, then keep the currency that coincides with the different passports that you have. That makes total sense. Again, that's why I said it kind of boils down to your personal setup and what is going to work for you, because we can't, we certainly don't have all the answers. So it's, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the main point we're trying to make is keep cash on you, always have cash on you, and don't be afraid to use it. And like we say, have some aside for that circumstance or that situation where your debit or your Visa or whatever isn't going to work. Then you're not stuck in that small little town because you can't get gas because their debit machine doesn't work or whatever. Hey, here's $50. I'd like $50 worth of gas, please. And they'll put $50 in for you, and away you go.
Yeah, I think they kind of roll it all up. The idea is to maybe have some cash that's going to get you through in like a little blip where internet's down, the grocery store can't process things because their debit machines are down or whatever. They get you through that little hiccup, and then maybe have a stash as well that's set aside for a bigger problem where all of a sudden it's we're getting into weeks or months of services being down and things not being available. That way you've got that little bit set aside, gets you through the little blip. You got your bigger amount set aside to get you through the bigger issues. Deciding where you're going to store it, how are you going to store it, how are you going to carry it. It's kind of a personal thing. You're going to have to come up with on your own, and that kind of also balances on your just your risk assessment and what you're what you're willing to kind of do. But periodically, even just reviewing and adjusting the amount of cash you have is probably important, right? Paying attention to the news and what's going on and what's happening and what could potentially happen in your area, and then reassessing, do I need this much cash on a daily basis on my person? Should I shuffle it into some of my storage or squirrel away spots? And then reassessing every whatever's comfortable for you, every year, every month, every 3 months. Do I need to carry that $100 in my pocket now? Or can I cut it in half, scroll $50 away into my hiding spot, keep 50 on me? Okay, I'm watching the news. A lot of things are happening. Maybe I'll take a little bit more out of my squirrel away spot and I'll carry $200 on me for the next month or two, just in case. Figuring that out is going to be important. And that's completely a personal thing that we really can't give you advice on, but maybe we can plant the seed in your head to think about it and plan it out yourself, because it's going to be important. It's going to be something you got to consider. And it also, do you travel a lot? Are you gone for extended periods of time, or are you close to home? Right? If you're close to home all the time, you get home real easily. Maybe you stash more in a secure spot at home. If not, secure spot in your car or on your person. And then just reassessing that and getting into the habit of looking it over. And I don't know, maybe looking over your go bag and your evac plans and your bug out plans and your stay home plans at the same time and tying it all together. Weird
Yep.
organization.
And of course, there's a comment from Joey in the live chat. I'm pretty sure Greg put him up to this comment, but you know that once a year he makes a hefty cash deposit at the Pew Pew store. So, Greg,
Clearly
thank you
an
very much.
American.
You're banned. Yep.
And those that don't know, we usually do a pre-show before we go live, where the panelists can all chat with each other in the same format that you see live here. And we tend to ban Greg about 3 or 4 times throughout that pre-show, just because of the things that
Yeah,
he
he
shows
likes
and
to throw.
talks
He
about.
likes to. He likes to toss around his Second Amendment rights quite liberally too.
Quite, yes, very freely. Yes, so we make sure to ban him, mainly out of jealousy. Not going to lie.
Yeah. Oh, fully out of jealousy.
Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of the roundup of cash. We wanted to kind of demystify a few things, give you a couple of things to think about, and just put it in your head, because especially if you're new to the preparedness world and you rely on cards right now, just getting used to the fact that maybe carrying a little bit of cash might be good for you. The seasoned preppers, for the most part, most already do, but it might be a good reminder for you as well. Maybe you've fallen into that comfort zone of, well, I'll just use my card for everything, and over time you just get used to it and you stop carrying cash. So carrying cash around, it's a big topic in the preparedness world, something to just keep in the back of your mind and have a little bit of a plan. Take some of the tips out of today's show and implement them yourself, and hopefully it helps you out a little bit.
Gee, that sounds like
Any
that was
last
the
second thoughts?
podcast challenge.
It might be. We might get into the podcast challenge in a second here. Any last second thoughts there, Jeff?
No, I think we've kind of covered everything that I sort of had on my list. So
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So podcast challenge. I don't think we've done podcast challenge in a little bit, but then again, I haven't been on in a little bit either. But yeah, the podcast challenge is just review what you're carrying now. And if you're not carrying anything, put a couple bucks away. Toss a few bucks in your wallet. Toss a couple bucks in the car in a big inconspicuous spot in the house. Just start thinking about, what could I possibly need some cash for in my day-to-day life? If you're the type of person that relies on your cards for the most part. If you're not, you're already squirreling cash away, and well, we're not going to help you. But for those of you that are maybe relying a little bit too heavily on cards and such right now, and the conveniences that life has provided us, start planning out putting some cash away, and what denominations and what type of currency, whether it's Canadian, American, the pesos, like Joey's going to do. So figure that out and figure out what you want to squirrel away. Upcoming events. So the annual Preppers Meet 2025. We already have the dates. July 10th to the 13th. So that's fantastic. Because in years past, we've had to kind of wait a little bit for the dates. So it's good to see the dates already up there. But location to be announced.
But as Terry says, there's a 99.5% chance that we'll be back at the same spot, the Slovenian hunt camp there, just north of Alliston. Great location, great area.
What a fantastic location.
Yeah.
I really hope it's there to stay for years to come, because that's an awesome location, and there's some talk about us doing a live show there next year, so that would be a lot of fun.
Yep.
Do you got a weather blurb,
All right.
Jeff?
Well, I'll slip into it. I do. So, it's funny. So for the most part, aside from some flooding, the odd tree down, stuff like that, we more or less seem to escape fairly well from Hurricane Debbie. The funny part is, a lot of people weren't even paying attention to it. There were people out there, and I made a comment. We got rain here the one day, and I said, "Well, that's going to be a bit of the remnants of Debbie." And they're like, "Who? What?" They had no clue. So, again, it is what it is. But having said that, don't pull your stuff out of storage yet. There is another storm in the Caribbean. It's already been numbered by the National Hurricane Center, which means it will probably get a name within the next several days. And that will be Ernesto. Ernesto is the next name up. Um, the increase, if there's any good thing about it, there will be some impacts like down in the Caribbean, like in the Lesser Antilles, possibly. I don't think it's going to make it as far as Cuba, but it'll get into like Espanola and those kind of places. Maybe the Turks and Caicos, possibly. Um, but a lot of the models are making it take a pretty drastic right turn before Florida and stay out in the Atlantic. So it's just going to be kind of what we term in the weather world as a fish storm. Now, having said that, Bermuda looks to be in line. If the path is as it says, they could get not maybe a direct hit, but at least a glancing blow. So be aware of that. Again, though, we're talking 5, 7, 10 days out for this, so things can and probably will change. But a lot of the models are starting to come into agreement that it appears that this is going to miss at least the southern part of the United States, like Florida, the Carolinas. That there is one rogue model that says it's kind of going to go up in the Atlantic and then it's going to make a left and it's going to make landfall somewhere around New York City or somewhere in there. I mean, if that happens, obviously for them that's a worst case scenario, but that's just an outlier at this point. So I wouldn't be running for the hills if you're in that area. But again, pay attention. But outside of that, I'll keep putting my posts up on the Discord under the hurricane section. So if you're not on our Discord, get yourself over there. In terms of the rest of the weather, Canada, the United States, we're going to see a lull in some severe storm activity for the next several days. Actually, you can thank Debbie for that. It's a long explanation as to how weather and all that stuff works, but basically the power of the storm moved the ridge further south and east. And if you haven't noticed in the last day or so, it's quite significantly cooler than it's been for most of the summer. And that's going to hang in there for probably the next several days, if not a week, and then we'll start to see a gradual warm up. But again, all things depend on where the next hurricane goes.
Awesome. Well, with that, I'll bring episode number 245 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, of course, your favorite podcast app. I'm pretty sure we're on all of them by now. Please do submit a review wherever you do listen, though, because it does help other people find us and, of course, encourages the algorithms.
And we do record these shows live on YouTube, Facebook, if that's your only option. If you want an early peek at the shows, please subscribe to the YouTube channel Canadian Prepper Podcast and click the notifications tab. That gives you an alert when we're going live. Anybody wants to reach out to me, you can send an email to feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
And they may or may not forward it along to Jeff. We'll see.
I haven't seen one yet, so I think the answer is you won't, but that's okay.
Or just nobody's
either that or I'm not very popular.
All right, you can check out Rapid Survival at rapidsurvival.com. You can get me there on the live chat. You can also email me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
and keep learning.